Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Rhode Island State House for GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 3 o'clock show. I'd like to welcome my first guest here. It's Dr. Ernie Julian with the Department of Health.
Hi, Kate.
Thank you for joining us. Wanted you to come here to the State House because you are an expert in foodborne illness and Memorial Day weekend, kicking off the summer months, picnics, barbecues, things that Rhode Islanders should be aware of, some things, food handling, food preparation, food storage, leading up to the weekend. So where should we start? Should we start meats?
Sure, let's start with meats. So first of all, foodborne illnesses increases during the summertime, and Memorial Day is a major concern. First thing, thoroughly cook your foods. You never want to serve undercooked hamburgers to a child, especially a young child. Use a meat thermometer, thoroughly cook it, cook the hamburger to at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit. While you could eat a steak on the medium side because most of the contamination is on the outside, with the hamburger it's throughout.
Okay, and so hamburgers really keep a close eye on, and just children more susceptible to foodborne illness.
Absolutely. With a young child, if you're serving undercooked ground beef, it could actually shut down their kidneys and it could kill the child.
Any recommendations for frozen patties versus fresh patties? Just keep that meat thermometer handy?
Keep the meat thermometer handy. If you're using a frozen patty, you're much more likely to undercook it.
Okay.
So definitely use the meat thermometer. With poultry, there's also a concern. What tends to happen is the fat drips into the fire. The fire flares up, the outside burns, the inside is undercooked. So again, use a meat thermometer, make sure it gets to at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit.
And so are you sort of a chef? Do you have any recommendations? I've heard maybe pre-cook chicken a little bit before you put it on the grill?
Sure. A lot of people will pre-cook the chicken ahead of time, not days ahead of time, just before putting it on the grill. The important thing is thoroughly cook it through one process. You don't want to heat it up, cool it down, and then heat it up again.
Okay. And then let's talk about food, storage. Once you've had the cookout, stuff might be sitting out there for a while. How long can food really sit out for? You're with friends, you're with family, you're in a backyard, you've cooked up the food, it's sitting there on the table. How long, let's just talk, just sitting out there, can it really stay?
Right. If you're keeping it cold, on ice, if it's cold food or hot, above 140 degrees, you can leave it out for a while. If it's not temperature controlled, then really, if it's above 90 degrees outside, an hour. An hour is max. Otherwise, 2 hours is the maximum if it's below 90. And
it's looking like it's going to be a warm weekend.
Right.
So be careful on the meats front, and then after that hour, if it's not being stored and cooled right away,
dump it.
It's got to be gone. Anything else on the grill we should be aware of? Anything with hot dogs?
Thoroughly cook them, again, is the key. The other important thing with the grill is make sure that you're not using the same plate for the raw food as the cooked food. That's very common. Or they're using a utensil for the raw food and then the same utensil for the cooked food, and then you're contaminating it. That alone could be enough to cause illness.
Okay, so be very careful with how you handle your meats, barbecuing. Let's talk a little bit about side plates. Let's talk about, as you said, if it's something that's an egg salad, a potato salad, something that's coming from the fridge, if it's not being chilled on something, if it's out there on a plate, no more than an hour and gone. Right.
And the other thing is if you're making up things like potato salad, ham salad, those kind of egg salad, try and make them up the same day that they're going to be consumed.
Okay.
You don't want to make up a large volume of food. Your refrigerator is not designed to cool down a large amount of hot food.
Let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing around the country as well. Is there still lettuce concerns with romaine?
There are, but most of that lettuce should be gone by now. The lettuce, romaine lettuce from Yuma, Arizona, most of it's gone by now, but CDC and FDA are still saying if you're not sure where the romaine lettuce is coming from, don't consume it. You don't want to consume romaine lettuce from Yuma, Arizona.
Okay, so keep an eye on the lettuce as well. You're going to be talking with a number of folks before the weekend. What else should people be aware of as they're watching the show?
Prevent contamination. Basically, you want to make sure that if you've got a cooler, you're not putting the raw meats in the same cooler as your other foods. You also want to make sure that the cooler is not in the sun. Put it in the shade. Keep it covered. It's a good idea to put your drinks into a separate container so you're not opening and closing the cooler a lot. Keep the food cold, thoroughly cook it, prevent contamination. Those are the keys.
And then, of course, if you are susceptible or if you experience a foodborne illness, you know right away.
Actually, most of the time, people blame the last meal that they ate as the cause of illness, and over 90% of the time, that's not the case.
That was the meal before?
Or several meals before. With norovirus, the major cause of foodborne illness is typically something you ate a day and a half ago. With salmonella and campylobacter, other major causes of illness, it's something you ate a day ago or 3 to 5 days ago.
And when should you seek help? If you're clearly having symptoms, is it checking your temperature? It's the duration of symptoms. When should you say, wow, I might need to go see a health professional.
Yeah, if you've got bloody diarrhea, see a health professional. If you've got a high fever, it's not clearing up, or it's a young child or somebody with immune system problems, see a physician.
Well, wanted to give folks, again, the inside scoop from the Department of Health with Memorial Day weekend and the entire summer coming up. These are lessons that you should really be keeping in mind. Doctor, I appreciate your taking the time to come on live.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back here at the Rhode Island State House. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Rhode Island State House. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. We'd just like to thank the Department of Health for giving us some tips to avoid foodborne illness with Memorial Day and the summer coming up. Thank you for coming on. We'd like to welcome my next guest, Michael Skolanskis. Thanks for coming in
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Recent Providence College graduate, but as of the other day, cannot set foot on Providence College.
That's correct.
Talk with us about how we've come to where we're at right now. And this all stemmed from an original posting you had made in a residential hall in support of traditional marriage.
Yeah, this is a long story. It started back in March when I posted a bulletin board supporting traditional Christian marriage. There was tremendous backlash on the college. The vice president was encouraging people to march and protest against me. It caught national news. And here I am finding myself now a graduate, not welcome back on campus because of an encounter with the vice president who failed to protect me against rape and murder threats.
And so talk with us a little bit, again, you're at a Catholic college, you decided to put that up. What's your thoughts on sort of how free speech is? You've got your ability to make free speech. Also, others have free speech, but it was those direct threats that happened after threatening you with rape and death.
Exactly. And, you know, when my poster went up, there was also had been a pro-lesbian poster that went up when nobody said anything about it. And that's okay. And you know, it's freedom of speech. And I did not receive the same respect that the other side did. And in fact, I was threatened pretty seriously over it.
So this just happened this past spring, correct?
Correct.
Now you've been at the school, you were at the school for 4 years. What's your sense of the community, both from the conservative to liberal side? I mean, have you seen hate intentions as far as this is concerned?
You know, there's a tremendous double standard I'm finding. There's fear that, we have a group on campus, the LGBT group is called Shepherd, and the administration would not come down in my support, and it was apparent that they were very fearful of that group upsetting them. And so while one side gets to say what they want, the other side, the conservative side, is not allowed to, and then when they're threatened, there's no consequences for it.
And as you said, the story going big, going national. I mean, who did you hear from once this bubbled up to this level?
I heard from all sorts of people, friends, past classmates. I mean, last time around, the Bishop of Providence wrote in support of me. Of course, many Catholics and Christians throughout the state who are concerned that their views aren't safe, but also if they express their views, they won't be safe either.
When you talk about that safety issue, again, you expressed your vantage point, some progressives expressed theirs. Would it have been okay, in your opinion, if it had been a dialogue, a back and forth, if it hadn't been elevated to the level of a threat?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was willing to do that all along. And in fact, there was a resident on my floor who identified as homosexual. And we sat down in the office and we had a civil conversation about it. And it was the administration leading the charge who just wouldn't dialogue about these things and instead incited protests and riots.
And so, as you said, the Vice President issued a restraining order. Now, what did this stem from? Just, again, your increased volume about how the college has reacted?
This was actually as a result, most recently, I received a threat of murder. And the Vice President and other administrators were made aware of this. And the college did very little. They said they would process it after graduation once those gentlemen had graduated. And so when I saw her over commencement weekend, I expressed that she should be ashamed of herself having been made aware of these things and done nothing. And then she went and called the police and claimed I threatened her, which I did not do.
So what now with this restraining order? You're a recent graduate, I'm sure would have desire, opportunity to go back to PC. What's the next steps?
The next steps is to see what happens at the hearing. So the temporary restraining order is good for 10 days, at which point the courts will decide once they get to hear my side, because she filed the restraining order when I was not present, I wasn't party to it. To see where this goes, because there's been grave mishandlings all along, Title IX investigation. It seems to me that, the college needs to be held accountable for what's happened here. We really need to expose the double standard.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come up to the State House as a recent graduate, still dealing with some legal repercussions at school. Michael Smolanskas, thank you for taking the time to come tell your story. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with our next guest here at the Rhode Island State House. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to GoLocal Live at the Rhode Island State House. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. I'd like to welcome my next guest in, Travis Escobar. Thank you so much for joining us from the United Way of Rhode Island. Lots of United Way folks out here today. I can see them all around the building. It's a special after-school day. The United Way's focus on after-school activities for youth, particularly calling for the need for a commission to really take a focused look at this and how we address the needs of our youth. So talk with us about why you're here today.
Yeah, so today is our second annual After School Day, part of the After School Leadership Circle. It's a statewide network where we're improving quality of after-school programs. The network consists of 50 providers statewide. We have a good group of people here today just spreading awareness to elected officials So for the past 2 years, we've been working on advocacy. We've been getting a lot of our after-school providers to come to the State House, meet their elected officials, and talk about the importance of after-school and summer learning. And more importantly, the past 2 years, President Trump has proposed zeroing out budget for 21st century grants. That federal funding, if that got eliminated, that would hurt over close to 6,000 youth in our state. So we've been looking to establish a commission to maybe find a way to get state funding to provide more quality program for our kids.
So it's really under fire right now,
Yeah.
these activities for kids around the state. I mean, how important were after-school activities for you when you were growing up?
Oh, they're really important. I participated in basketball, baseball. I wasn't really good at it, but I participated. And I remember going to chess club and debate. And also, I remember even coaching basketball, if you could believe that, with middle schoolers when I was in high school. So I think that was really important. And for our state, 80% of K through 12 youth, they spend it outside of the classroom. So if we're looking for Rhode Island to be competitive, we need to be looking at how can we educate our youth outside the classroom? How can we provide them opportunities in STEM and recreational sports? So that's what really today's all about.
So talk to us about the role of United Way in this process here, facilitating all these groups that are doing this work for after-school programming.
Yeah, so through the after-school leadership circle and through our program, Hasbro Summer Learning Initiative, we've invested $1.3 million to after-school programs, various programs statewide, and we convene a lot of these organizations to just help spread awareness about the importance of after-school and summer learning.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to come here. I know there's a big speaking portion taking place at 3:30, but wanted folks to know why United Way of Rhode Island was up here at the State House this afternoon in support of after-school programming. Travis, thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
taking
much.
the time to come on. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with our next guest here, live from the Rhode Island State House. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Rhode Island State House. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 3 o'clock show today, News and Politics. And I have an elected official with me. With Memorial Day weekend coming up, we'd also like to thank you for your service as a retired naval officer. Representative Camille Della-Wilkinson, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much for having me.
Because there's going to be some Memorial Day commemoration here at the State House. Talk with us about what's going to be taking place.
We're going to start off the session with the Hope High School JROTC Honor Guard. They'll come in through the main entrance and parade colors. And then we'll begin after that with an invocation by Father Robert Marciano, who is a military chaplain. We have an airman who's going to sing the national anthem. And then following that, we'll have the director of the Rhode Island Veterans Affairs, Kasim Yarn, who's going to give us a presentation and educate the House a little bit on the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. People often confuse the two.
That they do. And when you talk with folks, talk with us a little bit about your service. As you look back at your career, what role did the military play in your personal and professional life?
Well, the military was always very important to me. I come from a military family. My father served with his two brothers. I have cousins who served during the Vietnam era. And I always knew that I would end up serving in the military. And then my husband and my husband's family are also very much into the military. Our son, unfortunately, although when he was younger, he wanted to fly as a pilot for the Marine Corps, as he got older, he decided he didn't want to be in the military.
So when you joined the military, was it what you had expected?
It was what I expected and more, quite frankly. So I'm right out of college, and I had the opportunity to serve in leadership roles. The smallest budget that I handled, again, as a 20-something-year-old right out of college, was $4 million. So you have the opportunity to really take the lead and run with it.
And you talk about the opportunity to share with folks, again, the difference between Memorial and Veterans Day for those who have passed.
That's exactly right. Memorial Day honors those military members who died while they were serving in uniform, and Veterans Day honors all veterans for their service in the armed forces.
What do you think the state of the military is today here in the United States? Is it strong?
I believe that it's very strong, and I think it serves as a terrific model, especially when we talk about issues like pay equity. In the military, you're paid the same salary. You're paid based on the job, and it's connection to mission.
And I'm sure you probably keep an eye on international affairs as well, having a military background. What do you think of what's taking place in North Korea?
We live in very interesting times, Kate. And I served, my career in the Navy was during the Cold War. So what's going on in North Korea is very, very interesting.
And let's talk a little bit about veterans issues. You talk about the Veterans Director, Kasim Yarn. He's been on live before. How do you think the state stands, the state of the state in addressing the needs of veterans?
I think that the state is headed in the right direction. I'd like to see us move forward in the area of exempting military pensions from taxes. I think doing that will help us in a number of ways. Number one, it'll reduce the amount of military members and veterans that leave the state of Rhode Island. And number two, with them, and of course the potential loss of a congressional seat, is the brain drain, because you've got these men and women who've served in highly technical areas, strong leadership skills, who are leaving the state simply for that one reason.
I've talked with legislators about that. Do you think it's got traction? Do you think that there's enough political will for the trade-off for the loss of that small income to that multiplier effect of keeping those retirees here?
I'd like to think that there is, but I fear that there isn't, to be honest with you.
And so let's talk a little bit budgetary overall, as we talk numbers and we talk military pensions. With the revenue numbers coming in higher than expected, what are you looking at in the budget as we are in the waning weeks of the session here?
Oh, let me see. I would like to see money stay in adult education. I know that DCYF has complained that they're being short-sheeted, but I'm not convinced that they're spending the money appropriately, to be honest with you. But I would like to see the money go more into senior services.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time today to come on live, as there's, again, going to be a Memorial Day service celebration, if you will. And I want to thank you again for your service and coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Representative Ella Wilkinson, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back here at the Rhode Island State House. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Rhode Island State House for Go Local Live. I'm Go Local News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in for the 3 o'clock show. We've had a packed one for you, and I'd like to welcome my next guest on, Representative Robert Quattrochi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
You've got some legislation that is going to be heard today looking to protect the interests of Scituate taxpayers as it pertains to the water supply. Let's talk a little bit about what you're looking to achieve for your constituents.
Well, basically, I'm looking to bring a very modest amount into our town to help support our first responders and our DPW. And what's happening is that, and has been happening, is that water carriers, they are required by law to pay a certain percentage or charge their ratepayers a certain percentage, and that money goes into or it's supposed to go into a clean water protection fund. Now, what's happening, it's very similar to what's been happening with 911, is that, and some other things that I've learned, is that money sometimes gets diverted into other places. So, and
it gets scooped?
Well, no, yeah, not so much for the budget, but it gets diverted. This particular fund, 57% of it, alarmingly enough, gets diverted into the general fund. So I'm trying to bring a very small percentage of the money that Providence Water puts into that fund, 5% of what they put into it. It amounts to maybe $74,000, I believe. I originally thought it might be closer to 100, but it's very modest.
And particularly the role that Scituate plays. Why are you making the case here, and what should folks around the state know as you're representing Scituate?
Well, I mean, the town of Scituate, which I reside in, I've lived in for 50 years. We have been the caretakers of the reservoir and the water for over 100 years. And we are constantly facing challenges. The reservoir is a huge 5,000-acre lake, pretty much, just dropped dead in the middle of our town. So we're faced with lots of challenges as far as fire station, fire service, police service. I don't know what it is all the way around. I would say it might be a 30-mile drive all the way around it. So we're faced with different challenges.
And so do you think you can make the case to your colleagues here about this issue of fairness as the sponsor of the bill, trying to say, look, as the stewards of the reservoir, we have financial needs here, again, from this fund, which was supposed to go to certain purposes, but as you found out, is not.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest thing is that we're not looking for any increases from ratepayers. The money's already collected and it's being diverted to the general fund. That's where it needs to come from. So Providence Water wouldn't be hit for more taxes. The ratepayers aren't being asked to pay anymore. It's there already. It's just not being used for what it was intended for. So.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come up and explain a little bit more about this legislation, why you're seeking this, and we'll continue to follow this moving forward. Representative Quattrochi, I appreciate your taking the time.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next guest here, live at the Rhode Island State House. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Rhode Island State House with Go Local Live. I'm Go Local News editor Kate Nagel. I'd like to welcome my next guest on. She's been on live before, Amy Gardner. Thank you for taking the time to come today.
Thank you so much. Yes.
You are up here because on the Senate side is a piece of legislation that you've been fighting against. This is a database for health records that would, as you said, encompass the entirety of Rhode Island, and you've got issues with the opt-out.
Yes, very much so. It's extremely important legislation on the Senate side tonight, S-2530. The reason why it's so concerning is because it's being considered a vaccination database by the way it's being marketed. There is no terminology in this bill whatsoever that actually secludes it to solely vaccinations. And then the Department of Health was caught twice on the previous hearings here at the State House, stating that you have the option to opt out. But when further questioned by me and other activists, we're forced to admit you cannot actually opt out. You can simply block third-party access, but you cannot actually remove yourself from this database at all. And you cannot even opt in. You are automatically enrolled. It's very concerning and very overreach, and it's happening tonight.
So how many folks do you think will turn out to express their concerns on the Senate side?
I'm not sure. We did already have like 27-ish when this exact bill came to the Senate about 3 weeks ago. So we did have a good turnout. There was only 2 people that were showing up, and one of which the Department of Health, in favor of this bill. So there is way more opposition than there is favoritism to it. The problem is it came back to committee, and that's extremely concerning because usually the only time something comes back to committee is to pass. So we don't want that. I can't believe more people aren't concerned. It's not about vaccines. It's so much more, and it's your health records and your privacy. Everyone needs to be concerned about the terminology of this bill.
Would you be okay if there was an adequate opt-out provision?
I would be okay if there was an opt-in. You choose to partake, and you are not forced.
Okay, so you're looking for opt-in, not opt-out. What happens if they move with this moving forward in the form that you are not happy with?
It goes to the Senate floor if this comes out of committee, and then the Senate as a whole has to vote on it. The only thing saving us right now is that we're so close to the end of the legislative session, and this bill did not go through committee yet on the House side. So its duplicate hasn't made it this far.
Okay, we are in the waning days here, as we say, approaching Memorial Day weekend, but you're up here again advocating, again, in opposition to this piece of legislation. As I said, we've had you on before, but I'm glad we could get you up here at the State House. We're going to continue to follow this issue closely. Amy Gardner, thank you for taking the time to come on.
Thank you so much.
And don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next guest here live from the Rhode Island State House.